My name is Sarah Coleman, and I have something very profound to share, something that altered the very essence of my existence. For weeks, I struggled to find the right words to express what happened to me. But it is such a vital truth that I cannot keep it to myself. Something took me beyond what I had ever imagined possible. For a span of 12 minutes, I was clinically dead. My heart stopped beating. My lungs no longer breathed. But in those 12 minutes, I did not lose consciousness and forgetfulness. I found myself in such a real, vivid place that I am still trying to understand its meaning. What I found was not meant solely for me. It was a message for all of us. First, allow me to provide some background. I have dedicated more than 10 years of my life to working as an emergency nurse, and I have always approached the world through the lens of science, reason, and the concrete realities of life. My existence has always been determined by what can be seen, touched, and explained. In my years working in emergencies, I have witnessed both the depth of human suffering and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. If someone had told me just a year ago that I would be sitting here telling a story about death, resurrection, and carrying with me a direct message from Jesus Christ, I would have dismissed them as someone lost in fantasy. But life, as it often does, has a way of turning everything we thought we knew upside down. That morning began like any other. The night before, I had trouble sleeping after attending my son's football game. You know how it is when your mind doesn't calm down, and you have 1,000 thoughts about the day ahead. I decided to go for an early run to clear my head. The streets were quiet, enveloped in that peaceful stillness that precedes dawn. A light mist floated in the air, and the fresh, pure air was refreshing as I ran. I looked at my watch. It was 5:12 in the early morning. Everything around me seemed completely normal. But then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. I do not remember the exact moment of impact, but afterward, I learned that a distracted driver who was looking at his phone had run me over as I was crossing the street. In one moment, I was alive, moving through quiet streets. The next, everything went dark, waiting to drift into nothingness, into the realm of death. But instead, I was in an extraordinary place beyond what I could have imagined. The first thing I noticed was the light. It did not resemble anything we know, neither the light of day nor that of a street lamp. It was something entirely different, pure, warm, and alive. It enveloped me, not only illuminating the space around me, but radiating a peace so complete and absolute that it transcended everything I had known until then. I cannot fully explain it, but that peace was a complete absence of fear, anxiety, pain, or sorrow. It was as if all the burdens, all the weights I had carried throughout my life, disappeared. For the first time, I truly felt at home, full, calm, and unburdened. As I tried to absorb the wonder of it all, I began to notice colors, intense and radiant hues that I had never seen before. The air around me seemed to vibrate with energy, alive with a kind of music. Not a sound emanating from a single source, but a symphony of joy and love that filled every corner of that place. It was as if the very essence of happiness had become sound, flowing over me in waves. Then, from the warmth of the light, I saw a figure approaching. It was my father. My heart nearly stopped in my chest. He had passed away when I was a teenager, and yet there he stood before me, young and healthy, as if the years had never touched him. His smile was the same I remembered, but there was something transcendent about him now. Aura, a purity, a radiance that I cannot explain. "Sarah," he said in a voice full of love and tenderness, "you do not have to be afraid. He is waiting for you." Before I could even gather my thoughts or speak, he reached out his hand and took mine. In that moment, it was as if all the questions I had always wanted to ask him were answered without him saying a single word. I felt an overwhelming connection with him, a sense of peace that was both deep and comforting. "There's something you need to see," he told me. and the light around me intensified, focusing in a way that seemed intentional. It was then that I saw him, Jesus. Describing him is almost impossible. He was not the figure I had seen in paintings or books. He was both completely human and divine, exuding a presence unlike anything I had ever known. His love was palpable, filling the space around him, and his power was undeniable. When he looked at me, his eyes penetrated my soul, seeing not only who I was at that moment but also who I had been and who I was destined to become. It was as if he understood every part of me, the good, the bad, the hidden, and the redeemed. I fell to my knees, not out of fear, but out of profound reverence, a humbling overwhelm. Being in his presence made me feel a humility that cannot be expressed in words. Without saying a word, he placed his hand on my shoulder. "Sarah," he said in a soft but authoritative voice, "there is something you must see, something my people need to know before I return." Then he showed me 4 visions, each more incredible and instructive than the last. The first vision was called The Great Distraction. I saw people everywhere absorbed in their phones, tablets, and screens. Families sat together but did not speak. Friends sat side by side, but were more interested in their social networks than in the person beside them. Even individuals were trapped in the noise of the world, distracted by things that have no eternal value. "This is how the enemy works," Jesus explained. "He keeps them distracted, focused on the temporal so they forget about the eternal. Tell my people to wake up, to refocus their hearts and minds on me." The second vision was the Great Deception. People were hypnotized by beautiful lights and voices in the sky. Charismatic beings appeared, speaking of peace, unity, and enlightenment. But their words were a mix of truth and lies. Even the faithful were led astray by their promises of utopia, not realizing they were being deceived. "These are not from me," Jesus warned. "They will mix truth with lies, leading many astray. Tell my people to stay rooted in my word, for it is the only foundation that cannot be shaken." The third vision was the Great Awakening. It was a vision that filled me with hope. Waves of light spread across the world as people turned back to God. Families gathered in prayer, communities were rekindled in worship, and miracles occurred everywhere. But with this awakening came persecution. Believers were mocked, attacked, and even killed for their faith, yet their joy remained unshakable. "My Spirit will move powerfully in these days," Jesus promised, "but the cost of following me will be great. Tell them to stand firm, for the reward is eternal." The fourth and final vision was the Great Return. Heaven opened, and there he was, coming in glory with legions of angels. The entire world stood in awe. Every knee bent, every tongue confessed that Jesus Christ is Lord. Some did so in worship, others in terror, but all recognized his power. It was the most astonishing and inspiring thing I have ever witnessed. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, I came back to life, breathing, with my heart beating again. "This is what awaits you," Jesus said with a firm and authoritative voice. "Tell my people that I will come soon. Insist that they be prepared, for no one knows the day or the hour." As the vision began to fade, I remained kneeling before him, my heart heavy with what I had just witnessed. The vision was so profound, so overwhelming, that I could barely comprehend it. Yet despite everything, Jesus' gaze never wavered. It was as if the entire cosmos could stop at that moment, allowing him to focus solely on me, as if his words were only for my ears. His words settled deeply within me, taking root in a place where nothing could shake them. "Sarah," he said in a soft but powerful voice, "the world is on the brink of an unprecedented era. You have seen a glimpse of what is to come. But remember this: I am always with you and with all my people. My love remains constant, and my promises stand firm, unshakable in the face of this world's trials. Even when everything around you seems chaotic, those who place their trust in me will experience peace, a peace that transcends all understanding. He paused, and at that moment, the light around him seemed to intensify, radiating warmth and tranquility. It was as if his very presence had the power to dispel all fear and replace it with an indescribable calm. "You will face moments of doubt even," he continued with a steady gaze, "but you must know this. I chose you to carry this message, not because of your perfection, but because of your willingness to follow. Do not rely on your own strength, but on mine. And remember, this message is not yours alone to carry. My Spirit will guide you, giving you the words you need when the time comes." Before I could gather my thoughts or speak, he gently placed his hand over my heart. In that instant, a wave of love washed over me, so intense and all-encompassing that it brought me to tears. It was a love that went beyond anything I had ever known, unconditional, unlimited, unshakable. "Tell my people," he said tenderly but with unmistakable power, "I see their struggles, their fears, and their failures. I am not far from their pain. I am the God who heals, who restores, who makes all things new. They are never alone. I am always with them." As his hand slowly lifted from my chest, the glow of the surrounding light seemed to change, indicating that the extraordinary moment was coming to an end. A deep sense of finality filled the air. "Now," Sarah said, with a sweetness that still conveyed undeniable urgency, "it is time for you to return. Your work here is not finished. Go and tell them that I will come soon." In that instant, everything changed. The vivid colors, the immense peace, all collapsed inward as if being drawn into a single point of light. Then I felt it. A jolt, a tug, a wave of sensations as I was suddenly pushed back into my own body. The first thing I noticed was pain, a burning pain in my chest, as if a fire had ignited within me. My lungs struggled to inhale, desperate for air as if they had forgotten how to breathe. I opened my eyes and found myself surrounded by paramedics. Their faces were a mix of astonishment and relief. "She's back," one of them whispered with a voice trembling from emotion. "We have her back," another said. I could barely move, much less speak, but the tears streaming down my face were not of pain. They were tears of gratitude and awe for what I had just experienced. I longed to share it with them, to tell them everything, but the words refused to come out. All I could do was grab the hand of one of the paramedics, silently pleading for them to understand the depth of what had just happened. The following days were a whirlwind of physical and emotional tension. However, my recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Despite being run over by a car, my injuries were far less severe than anyone had anticipated. The doctors were baffled by my rapid healing, describing it as incredible and inexplicable. But I knew the truth. It was a miracle, and I was alive for a reason. As I lay in the hospital bed, recovering and reflecting on the vision, Jesus' words resonated in my mind, becoming clearer with each passing moment. I went over every detail: the voice of my Father, the overwhelming presence of Jesus, the flashes of the events to come. And with that came a deep sense of purpose, a certainty that I had been chosen for something greater. No matter how difficult or unimaginable it seemed, I had to share this message. I had to tell others what I had seen, what I had felt. The transition back to normal life was not easy. It was hard to explain what had happened, to explain the inexplicable. How could I convey such a deeply spiritual, otherworldly experience to those who might not understand it? Some listened in awe, their faces reflecting the same reverence I felt. Others, however, looked at me with skepticism. Their doubt was evident. But I remembered Jesus' words. Some would doubt, some would mock, but there would be others, those with ears to hear, who would understand and prepare. And so I moved forward, knowing that my mission was clear and that I could not let fear or uncertainty silence the truth I had been given.